Good evening, Professor. This is Team 7, Lab number 9, final case study, the Equifax breach. The Equifax data breach, a wake-up call. In 2017, Equifax suffered a massive data breach that exposed the personal information of over 170 million individuals. Hackers exploited a known vulnerability in their systems, stealing sensitive data like social security numbers, birth dates, and credit card numbers. This breach not only caused significant financial harm to Equifax, but also eroded public trust. It sparked a national conversation about data security and the importance of protecting sensitive information. The root cause of the Equifax breach. A series of missteps and oversights led to the Equifax data breach. Some of the key factors included unpatched vulnerabilities. Equifax failed to address a critical vulnerability in their systems, leaving them open to attack. Poor security practices, weak security practices such as an inadequate monitoring and a lack of network segmentation allowed hackers to move freely within the network. Outdated systems. The outdated systems and legacy applications were vulnerable to exploitation. The organization failures, a lack of clear accountability and poor communication between IT and the security teams contributed to the system.
The Equifax breach revealed major structural and communication issues that hampered the company's response. The CEO, Richard Smith, delayed informing the board and public, widening the response gap. The CIO, David Webb, oversaw IT systems but not cybersecurity, creating a disconnect, while CSO Susan Malden, responsible for cybersecurity, reported to the chief legal officer instead of the CIO. This fragmented structure led to poor coordination, and the board and technology committee lacks cybersecurity expertise, resulting in weak oversight. Delayed communication between IT and security teams left the board uninformed for weeks. These missteps underscore the need for strong leadership and clear accountability in the cybersecurity. Next slide. Addressing breaches like the Equifax, shows both strengths and challenges in the legal system. In the U.S., the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, the CFAA, targets unauthorized access, and the FTC enforces consumer protection laws. States like New York and laws like the SHIELD Act requiring data protection and timely breach notifications. However, prosecuting international attackers like those suspected in the Equifax breach is tough. Attribution is tricky, and jurisdictional limits make extradition unlikely. Globally, GDPR protects EU residents, but enforcement is weaker for breaches outside Europe. These issues highlight the need for stronger global collaboration to combat cybercrime. Next slide.
There are many legal measures that were created to fulfill the regulatory requirements, many of which are the improvements of existing policy and procedures, including the strengthening of patch management policies to ensure that systems are kept up to date. Data encryption requirements for stored information require that data be at rest and in transit encrypted. Strengthened access control policies will allow systems to be locked down and control who has access to them. And regular updates to cybersecurity best practices are important due to the evolving nature of technology. The implementation of systems also mandate SSL certificate monitoring systems, implementation of proactive vulnerability detection, and ensuring comprehensive IT asset inventories. Additionally, audits are required because they are needed for regulatory and compliance checks. After a breach, litigation settlements and reparations to the victims are required to ensure that the public trust is retained. One thing that is also extremely important is imposing executive accountability measures to ensure regulatory compliance. Next slide. And the impact of the data privacy laws include the creation of international and local laws, GDPR being one of them that are for international breaches, and state laws like California's CCPA, which provides consumer empowerment through data access rights, standardization of global data protection laws, and implementation of real-time monitoring requirements. The repercussions for failing to meet regulatory requirements include long-term consequences of strict regulations and increased scrutiny from regulators. Also, the impact on the business would be clearly to their reputation and would ensue that the mistrust from the consumers keep them from getting additional business. Next slide.
Some mitigation measures that were taken and that can also be taken are listed here on this slide. We're going to go through 12 of these mitigation measures. So first mitigation measure, conduct regular cybersecurity training for employees. It's important to keep educating employees about the latest threats, phishing tactics, and best practices that can significantly reduce human error. Human error is a common point of entry for cyber attacks. The next mitigation measure is implementing a zero trust architecture. This approach assumes that no user or device is trustworthy, requiring strict verification and authorization before granting access to any resource or company resources. Another mitigation measure that can be taken is enhancing encryption protocols for stored data. Encrypting sensitive data ensures that even if it's compromised, it remains unreadable to unauthorized individuals. Another mitigation method is updating and monitoring certificates. Keeping certificates up to date and monitoring for vulnerabilities protect web traffic and prevent man-in-the-middle attacks. Moving on, we have segmentation of critical systems. Isolating critical systems from less sensitive ones limits the potential of a damage or a successful attack. Another mitigation measure is increased investment in cybersecurity technologies. Allocating more resources to advanced security solutions can help organizations stay ahead of evolving threats. Establishing an incident response plan is very important for an organization to prevent attacks and also to recover from attacks. Having a well-defined incident response plan allows organizations to respond quickly and effectively to cyber attacks, minimizing damage and downtime. Strengthening patching processes. Promptly applying security patches to software and systems can close vulnerability threat attackers that the attackers can exploit. Another mitigation item is real-time threat detection systems. Utilizing advanced tools that can detect and respond to threats in real time can prevent attacks before they cause any significant harm. Increased transparency with regulators and the public. Being transparent about security incidents and breaches can help build trust and mitigate reputational damage. Developing internal oversight committees. Establishing internal teams dedicated to cybersecurity can improve an organization's security posture and ensure compliance with various regulations. Finally, we have partnering with external cybersecurity experts. Collaborating with experts can provide valuable insights, threat intelligence, and specialized service to enhance security. Next slide.
For public relations and reputation management, there were several areas where Equifax didn't take immediate action that caused them additional pain and additional mistrust from the public, including the delayed disclosure of the breach both to the public and also to regulators. In addition, 3 individuals who traded securities of the firm were thought to maybe have information about the breach when they sold the securities. Equifax should have implemented an immediate blackout period of company stock sales to avoid the appearance of insider trading and make it look even worse for the firm. When providing consumers with internal credit, their internal credit monitoring tool, they gave them 1 free year, and then we're going to automatically charge them going forward, which also led to more public relations issues for the firm. They also included an arbitration clause that could be read as being arbitration for the breach itself and not just for using the product, which they later backtracked and said was not what they intended, and then backtracked the second time saying that it wasn't meant to be there, was copied from somewhere else and removed it. I think overall, a clear incident response plan, knowing how to respond, the ways they were going to respond, when they were going to respond was lacking in this situation and could have prevented some of these PR issues. Next slide. So some recommendations to the board of directors include the chief security officer and the chief information officer having the same equal reporting lines and reporting directly to the CEO and the board of directors, without the chief legal officer overseeing the chief security officer, since they had no experience in cybersecurity or computer security at all. Establishing a formal cybersecurity committee with regular meetings, with documented agendas and minutes to ensure that things that come up in one meeting don't get lost in the next meeting, as was the case here. Implementing a document incident response plan that gets tested on a regular basis. Regular third-party testing of their controls, both internally and externally, to make sure that the systems are running the most recent versions of software and that there's no patch management issues, and retaining a PR firm to assist with such events should they occur in the future. Next slide.
So the Equifax beta breach lasted for about 7 months. It started in March and hackers were exploited to the vulnerabilities. Then we moved on to May, where they started collecting the data. A couple of months passed by and we're in July, where the security team was noticed. It was kind of a big jump from May to July. And then we move on to August, where the FBI was contacted and they confirmed the theft of information. At that time, a lot of people were informed. In September, they finalized that 143 million users were affected, and they announced it as well. The CIO and the CSO also resigned, and then closing off in October, 2.5 million people were affected, confirmed, and the board added a security expert to their team. Next slide. So a few of the organizational failures that Equifax faced was quite a lot, but one could have been a weak leadership in cybersecurity, which is a significant threat to the organization, and a lack of ownership. It could have been insufficient investments, ignoring risk, and poor communication that leads to an overall failure. This can lead to multiple data breaches and financial losses and legal liabilities. Another point is dividing the IT security, which could be detected in many failures, including different priorities and higher costs, and it reduces the efficiency. A lack of robust incidents, such as data loss, damage, and it also the brand reputation overall gets triggered. The legacy systems for this software could also be outdated and very limited visibility, and the monitoring and security of the organization was overall compromised. Next.
So there's a couple lessons learned from this breach, and we're going to go through about 10 to 12 of those lessons to be learned. One of the lessons that is learned from this breach is that there's a need for real-time monitoring systems. Constant monitoring of networks and systems allow for immediate detection and response to threats, reducing the window of opportunity for attackers. Another lesson learned is the importance of a centralized patch management system. A centralized system ensures that all devices and softwares are updated with the latest security patches, which minimizes vulnerabilities. There's a necessity for integrating IT and security roles. Combining IT and security teams fosters collaboration, improves incident response, and ensures that security is considered in all IT decisions. Another lesson learned is the regular audit to ensure compliance and accountability. Regular audits help identify security gaps, assesses compliance with regulations, and holds individuals accountable for security practices. There's a need for a rapid public disclosure to mitigate reputational harm. Promptly disclosing security breaches can help mitigate damage of a reputation and demonstrate transparency. Another lesson learned is the continuous cybersecurity training for all staff levels. Regular training keeps employees informed about the latest threats and best practices, reducing the risk of human error. Encryption of sensitive data to prevent unauthorized access. Encrypting sensitive data ensures that even if it's compromised, it remains unreadable to attackers. Another lesson learned is the backup strategies to minimize data exposure. Regular backups allow for data recovery in case of a cybersecurity attack or other data loss event. There is an importance of maintaining up-to-date technology. Keeping technology up to date ensures that it has the latest security features and is less vulnerable to attacks. Implementing segmentation in network architecture. Segmenting networks limits the impact of successful attacks by isolating all critical systems. There's a need for greater transparency with regulators and consumers. Being transparent about security practices and incidents can help build trust and mitigate reputational damage. Finally, building organizational culture fosters focus on security. Creating a culture where security is a priority at all levels can improve security awareness and encourage proactive measures. Next slide.
So the lessons, so the board's role in cybersecurity. The Equifax breach serves as a stark reminder. The Equifax breach serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of neglecting cybersecurity. The key lessons include strong leadership, which is essential to drive a culture of security. Which then ties back to the technologies committee's limited effectiveness, which then also trickles down to the lack of regular updates from the CSO to the board. The board's delayed responses to the breach also showed the lack of agenda and initiative and prioritization that the individuals that were assigned to these roles had for the preservation of data and the agenda of the IT presence being alive in the firm. Establishing the subcommittee for cybersecurity oversight and protective security measures then trickles down to the lack of employee training and a robust incident response. The evaluation of leadership and handling breaches definitely could have been better, and the regular collaboration with external cybersecurity advisors should have been a pivotal piece in bettering the environment and the cybersecurity steps. If all of these were in place, a different outcome would have definitely happened. Next slide.
The Equifax data breach of 2017 had a devastating impact on consumers, exposing their personal information and leaving them vulnerable to identity theft and financial harm. The exposure of sensitive personal information for over 145 million individuals led to widespread concerns about data security and privacy. Consumers face significant risks of identity theft, financial loss, and emotional distress. The breach also sparked public outrage over Equifax handling of the situation, including mandatory arbitration clauses and lack of transparency. This event highlighted the urgent need for stricter data privacy regulations and a stronger cybersecurity measures to protect consumer information. Next slide.
Due to the magnitude of this incident, there were many implications, one of which is the need for proactive risk management, which is necessary to identify, prioritize, and mitigate risks before existing vulnerabilities are exploited. Increased regulatory scrutiny of credit bureaus due to the sensitive nature of the data stored. Development of stricter data breach disclosure laws to ensure that the public is notified in a timely manner. Consumer demand for improved data protection measures was also necessary to make sure that the sensitive data is kept from unauthorized users. The benchmarking of cybersecurity practices in the industry created minimum standards to ensure that securing systems was more manageable, and a greater investment in cybersecurity across sectors will ensure security-focused operations in organizations. The publicized impact of cybersecurity failures on stock value would help keep these companies honest, while calls for industry standard encryption protocols protect the data in transit and at rest. Enhanced focused on third-party vendor security risks, ensure that not only are risks addressed within the organization, but in third parties, and the pressure for transparency in cybersecurity policies. The rising demand for independent security audits also was implemented as a way to keep organizations honest, and integration of artificial intelligence in threat protection would help assist in reviewing of threats in an organization. Next slide.
So there are a couple actions that Equifax took after the breach, and we're going to go through 3 categories of them. And under each category, there are a few points I want to highlight. First category is consumer protection, free credit monitoring, protecting affected consumers' financial information. Equifax decided to take this as a way to help bolster the reputation with the public. Another post-action that Equifax took was the new consumer protection measures. They were implementing stronger safeguards for future incidents. The next category is an organizational response. The Equifax management and team decided to do public apologies, acknowledging the breach and taking full responsibility. Increased customer support. All affected customers were given support and identifying what specific information was leaked. There was a restructured IT and security team. Equifax decided to strengthen internal security capabilities, and they decided to bring about security experts, not only as a department, but also on the board to provide strategic oversight. Equifax also now provides enhanced transparency, communicating regularly with the regulators and the public for a method to bridge the gap between the public and Equifax. There's improved breach communication protocols. Equifax efficiently informs all affected parties. And the third category is the technical measures. There's a cybersecurity investment. Equifax has allocated resources in the amount of millions to strengthen their defenses. Equifax also conducts external audits, bringing in auditors to identify vulnerabilities and regularly improving their security posture. There's a removal of arbitration clauses, empowering consumers to seek legal recourse in the event that another breach occurs. There's also SSL certificate management, ensuring secure communication amongst all channels. Next slide.
In comparing the Equifax breach with some of the other breaches that occurred, there was a Yahoo breach in 2013, 2014, where 3 billion user accounts were stolen. But in this case, only email addresses and hash passwords were taken from Yahoo. There was no personally identifiable information taken as there was in the Equifax breach. There was also a Target had a breach in 2013 where about 40 million credit and debit card numbers were taken. While this breach also had some level of financial risk to people because their credit and debit card numbers were taken, there wasn't the extensive amount of personal identifiable information taken from users as there was in Equifax. Given the sheer volume of users' personally identifiable information taken from Equifax, it made it a larger problem for people in general, for consumers, and then became a bigger issue for regulators as well. Next slide.
All in all, there are many technological gaps that existed in Equifax, one of which is the lack of file integrity monitoring, which left them unable to see changes in their files, limited log retention policies, which would prevent log reviews if an incident lasted beyond their logging capabilities, expired SSL certificates across critical systems, allowed unauthorized access to those systems, outdated ACIS infrastructure dating back to the 1970s, minimal segmentation in the network architecture allowed hackers to move throughout their network, undetected and encrypted. Sensitive data storage allowed unauthorized access to sensitive data. Limited ability to detect unusual network activity also left the organization blind to malicious actions, and a failure to integrate acquired companies' IT systems did not allow them to have cohesive reviews of alerts. The lack of automated patch managing made a patch management a manual and time-consuming process, which allowed these vulnerabilities to remain, and delays in identifying and addressing vulnerabilities allowed the hackers to gain access to their systems. Legacy systems rely on a few specialists, made sure that there were only few people that can address these systems. And lastly, reactive rather than proactive cybersecurity approach left them reacting to malicious actions that already existed rather than actively prevent them from getting in altogether. Next slide.
All right, Professor. That's all that we had to share on this topic. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.